Good morning, and welcome to this short introduction to 3D printing for complete beginners. It's aimed at those who've no experience whatsoever in 3D design. So to make a 3D printed part, you first need a computer drawing of that part. So how do you produce that? Well, the overall process is simple. You start with a normal two-dimensional drawing, and then you give it a thickness. This gives you a basic three-dimensional shape to use as a starting point. You can then draw another 2D sketch on any of the faces, the top, the bottom, the sides, and give that a thickness. You can then pick another surface, draw a sketch on that, give it a thickness. And in a similar way, you can remove material. For example, in order to make a hole, just pick your surface, draw your sketch, and instead of adding material to thicken it, remove material. Keep going in this way, adding and removing material until you've created the final shape that you need. So let's see how this is done then using a computer. So the software we're going to use to design our part is Autodesk Inventor. So after loading up the software, simply click the icon above the word New. Then choose a standard millimeter part and click Create. This will leave us in the part design window. So we'll follow the same process as we used before. We'll create a 2D sketch and then give it thickness. So click Start 2D Sketch and you'll be presented with a set of planes. These are the sheets of paper you can draw on. If you hover over them, it will select that particular plane. We'll use the XY plane, so just click that and this will leave us on our sheet of paper. So we'll draw a simple rectangle, so click the rectangle tool and then the point in the center, and then as you move the mouse you'll see it will size a rectangle as big as you want. You can put numbers directly into those boxes, so well, if we have it 20 millimeters by 10, press 20, then the tab key to get to the other box, 10, then the return key will create our rectangle 20 by 10. Click Finish Sketch and there's our rectangle. Now we'll give it some thickness. To do that we use a feature that Inventor calls Extrude. So we click the Extrude button and that leaves us with an object. And we can either left click on this arrow to make it as thick or as thin as we like, or we can type the number straight into the box as before, so we'll make it a 10 millimeter thick block. Make it a bit smaller, 5 millimeters thick block, and click OK. And there's our block. Now we continue as before, adding features to this block. So you can see as you hover over each face, it will turn green. You can rotate the object using this cube at the top. Simply click on one of the faces or on the corner or on one of the edges, and then left click and hold, and you can rotate the shape around. If it's too close to the top or bottom of the screen, you can click with the wheel, the middle mouse button, click the wheel down, and then you can move the object around the screen. Okay, so to add a feature, hover over the face you want drawn, right click and New Sketch. This will draw a new sketch onto that face. So we can draw a new rectangle. Like that, click Finish. Then we do the same thing. We give it some thickness, so click Extrude. Inventor's clever enough to know to use the last shape that you've drawn as the thing you want to extrude. You can change by selecting different things if there's different features to select, but it has a good guess at guessing the right thing. So once again you can pull with the arrow, or you can enter a number directly in the box. When you're finished, click OK. There's the next part. There we are. So now we can continue. Select the next face, right click, New Sketch. This time we'll draw a circle, so click the circle tool. Click and then finish the sketch. We'll have a circle, click Extrude, and now we can thicken that up to produce a 3D shape. Click OK when you're done. The same tool, extrude, is used also to remove material. So hover over the part, hover over the face you want to draw on, right click, new sketch, have another circle drawn here, there we go, finish the sketch, and this time we use extrude again. Now as you can see, as before, it's guessed that you want to put material onto the part. What you want to do is click this little flip arrow, flipped, and it will extrude down into the workpiece and make a well in the surface, in this case 2.5mm deep. You can make it go all the way through to the other side by clicking the Through All button. When you're done, click OK, and now you will have a hole in the workpiece. You keep on working in that way, adding and removing material until the part looks as you wish. Then you're ready to 3D print it. So now you're ready to save the part in a format used by 3D printing software, and we use STL files for that. So go to File, hover over Save As and select Save Copy As, and select STL file. Now the first time you do this, you'll probably want to change some settings. So go into Options and make sure the units are set to millimeters and the resolution is set to high. Click OK. Give your part a name. Click Save. The file is now ready to be loaded into the 3D printing software. Okay, so the final step is to convert the STL file that we've just created into something that the 3D printer can understand. And to use that, we use the software Cura. So the first thing we need to do is load in the STL file that we've just produced. So go File, Open File, and choose the STL file. This will load it in onto the 3D printer bed. You can zoom in using the mouse wheel, and you can reposition by clicking the mouse wheel and then lifting the screen around to centralize the part in the view. There's our shape. The process of converting that shape into the actual lines of 3D print material that the printer will use is called slicing. And we can first of all set a few settings, and so click this bar at the top which contains the settings, and we'll just check a few of them over. Most of the time you'll be able to leave the defaults. There's just one or two things that you might want to specifically check. One is the infill density. When it prints these parts, it prints them with a kind of honeycomb structure inside, so solid walls and an infill. This is going to infill at 18%, which is good for most purposes, but if you want more of a solid part, you can increase this setting, which will give you a bit more strength. The other setting we need to worry about is generate support. When the 3D printer prints, it kind of starts with the bottom layer against the bed and gradually moves up. But it means that if you have any parts that protrude, such as this pin, they'll be trying to print on top of thin air, and obviously this won't work. So what we need to do is tell it to build up a support scaffolding underneath so that when it comes to print this, it'll have something to rest on. So we'll turn this on because we have a part that sticks out like that. And the other setting is build plate adhesion. This is to help the part stick onto the 3D printer bed when it's printing. Brim is really only useful if you're printing something long and thin where it's not supported by much, so it puts a thick brim around it to hold it upright. We'll change this to a skirt and we'll see what that is in a moment. Everything else should stick for the defaults, so when you're ready just click the slice button. We can click this to fold that out of the way, and so we can see that this will take 10 minutes to print and use a gram of material. It's a very small part. What we can do next is click preview to see exactly what the 3D printer will produce. So the first thing to notice is this skirt that it's put around the outside. It prints this first before it starts on your actual part, and there's several reasons for this. Firstly, it makes sure the printer nozzle is not blocked and it's printing nicely and the material is flowing freely. Secondly, it helps you to see that all the part will fit onto the bed. This is a very small part, but if you had multiple parts or a much bigger part, it will draw this first, and you can see straight away if any bit sticks off the edge of the bed and the part won't print. It's a good clue for that. The other purpose is to see that the bed is level, because when it prints this, it should come out nice and evenly. If, for instance, it's very thin at one side, it means that the bed needs leveling and it's not going to print the part evenly. So you should stop the print, level the bed, start again. When all is well, it will then continue drawing this central piece. You can see the pin and you can see the scaffolding that it's built underneath. You'll be able to easily break this away when the part is finished printing. You can then pull this slider down and actually see layer by layer exactly what the printer will be doing. So you can see this is the infill at just 18%. So there's a grid structure there, mostly air inside. One extra thing to bear in mind while you're preparing these models for printing is which way up it should be on the bed. Now, as I pointed out, any bits that overhang will require scaffolding underneath, so you want to position the part on the bed so that there's a minimum amount of scaffolding needed. You can rotate by holding the right mouse button down and rotating the screen. So we can bring the part into the center, and if we highlight it by clicking on it, you can see there's a number of options we can do with the part. So the default action is to be able to move the part on the bed, which would be useful if, say, you needed to print multiple parts or you had a bigger part that you needed to move to the center. You can also rotate the part by clicking the rotate button, and that will give you a set of these 3 rotation wheels, and you can pull this round. It'll tell you the angle, and so that would print it upside down. Now, for this particular part, this wouldn't be a good way to print it, because you would need support material under this whole structure in order to be able to print this top part, which would use a lot more material, take more time. So for instance, if we try to slice it this way up, click slice, you can see the time it takes us increased, and if we look at the preview, you can see it's had to build scaffolding under this entire structure. So getting the piece as flat as possible on the bed so that it doesn't need a large amount of support material is one of the key things for producing your 3D print. So that's it for this very quick introduction. Thanks for watching.